a lot is happening in space, and of course in any domains. We're looking at our own planet to protect our own planet, and then of course we look outside, Moon, Mars, but also low Earth orbit. And it is true, now there's another race to the moon that is taking place, of course triggered by the United States, by China and other nations, and also ESA is very active on going to the moon. We have a number of activities and projects where we are working to get there. One of them is called Moonlight. Moonlight is a system that will allow navigation, communication on and around the moon. Just imagine like on planet Earth where you have your mobile phone and you communicate or you navigate. And in the future when astronauts communicate, when rovers need to move around, you need communication and navigation. So we build up a system, a space-based system where we have a few satellites that allow this to happen. Actually, the UK, together with Italy and a number of other nations, are leading this project, and we are just about to begin it. We will have the first satellites in place in a couple of years so that this system is ready. Another big project is called Argonaut. Argonaut is a big transport vehicle which brings about 1.5 tons from Earth to the moon surface for equipment, experiments, and infrastructure that you need to build up an economy on the moon. Then, of course, we, in addition to this Argonaut and Moonlight project, we participate very strongly with NASA on the Artemis program, which brings astronauts back to the moon surface. The Orion capsule, which is the one that transports the astronauts there, actually is powered by the European service module, which is provided by the European Space Agency, which brings power, oxygen, living conditions, the living environment, temperature and everything is regulated by this European service module. So in other words, NASA is relying on ESA to bring astronauts back to the moon, and this is something I'm very proud of.
There is a global race now to the moon. What is the role of the European Space Agency in that race?
It's a very good question, actually, and, but it is something that is really developing now, because now I see worldwide, and this is really the United States, but also China, Japan, but also newer countries, Saudi Arabia, the UAE, the Emirates, India, and many nations are now going to the moon and establishing a moon economy, as we call it. And also Europe is quite active in this future moon economy. You have to imagine that in, say, 10, 15, 20 years, you will have infrastructure there. There will be buildings, there will be a launch base, there will be rockets launching from the moon and possibly going from the moon beyond to Mars or other places in the universe. So there will really be an economy coming up. Of course, research and technology development is a major driver, and there will also be resources that can be found on the moon, rare earths or other the resources that are needed to build up an economy on the moon surface. So yes, we really speak about this lunar economy. It will develop over time. Of course, first we need to go there with rovers, which is already happening, with astronauts again, which is coming up very soon. But yes, I see quite an active environment and ecosystem building up around the moon, on the moon, and I think this is quite exciting.
I would like now to move to sustainability. What is the work that the European Space Agency is playing regarding sustainability and making your work environment friendly?
We're doing a lot of things. First of all, it is fair to say that climate change would not be understood to the extent as we understand it today without satellites. Our satellites are monitoring our planet every single minute. We say we are taking the pulse of our planet, and we really study how the atmosphere, the oceans, the land surface, the polar regions are changing in order to better understand climate change, to better understand the science, but also to protect our citizens against the impacts of climate change. So without satellites, we would not be able to do that. So for climate change monitoring, climate action, satellites are extremely important. In fact, ESA is having a very strong Earth observation program called Copernicus, which is monitoring our planet. We disseminate every single day about 300 terabytes of data to the world for free in order to study our climate. And this is the largest Earth observation program in the world where we do make all these measurements. But also we have other programs which are looking at science, the science of our planet, and in order to better understand scientific aspects. But also for meteorology, we develop all the meteorological satellites for geostationary or polar orbiting satellites for EUMETSAT, which works closely with ECMWF to make daily weather forecast. Again, weather forecast could not be done without satellites at the precision as we are doing. So there you see that with Earth observation, which is helping agriculture, forestry, ship routing, disaster management, security, and many other domains, you do need satellites every single day, which are used on our planet. And ESA's Earth observation program is large. We have about 30% of our budget spending on Earth observation, but this collectively, with our partners in Europe, we have developed the world's most significant Earth observation program. We work very close with the European Union, with all the member states. The UK has now joined also the European Union Copernicus program. I'm very happy about that because that really allows the UK to work through ESA and the European Union on climate action by using satellites which are essential for daily life for citizens around the world, and especially also in the UK, but in any parts of the world.
My next area is security. So I want to talk about the chaos that happened by the Falcon CrowdStrike software, and what are you doing to avoid any incident like that?
This is certainly a very big concern for all of us. If software updates are leading to the crash of the system or the system not working, of course this is something that we are all very cautious. But I can tell you that this IT failure which happened just a few days ago has not impacted the ESA system, neither on the ground nor in space, because we have a very strong, a very robust cybersecurity system in place, and we have not at all been impacted. But of course we have seen the impacts on aircraft, on many offices, on hospitals and many other places. But I'm very happy to say that our cybersecurity system is very robust. Of course, immediately asked for a verification of whether we are impacted or not, but we have a very strong system that has not been impacted by this failure. So this is very good news, because we need to do everything to protect our satellites in orbit, even our astronauts in space, and of course our ground systems with communication, but also all the information that we have on our project. So yes, I'm very glad to say that, that this is not something that has impacted us.
There is a link always between defense and space industries. Defense is giving some despair because of wars, and space is giving hope. How can we separate between them?
I mean, it's obvious that, and this is something that, of course, we see globally, that in many countries, I take the United States, I take China, I take India, I take Japan, and many other countries where space and defense is very tightly linked. This is obvious for, I think, obvious reasons. But in Europe, the situation is actually quite different, surprisingly, because Europe has a very strong focus on peaceful uses of space or of technologies. In Europe, for example, the defense action on space is much smaller compared to the United States, for example. It's a factor of 4 to 5 in between in terms of budget, which in Europe is much smaller. So yes, it is true that space has many dimensions. Space has a dimension of an economic growth sector. Space is providing infrastructure, data, which are needed for daily life of citizens. Space is also strategically important in order to innovate in a country, to push the economy and therefore position a country better. But space also has a dimension of security, and this is certainly something that is increasing around the world. Also, of course, obviously through the current situation on our continent, in Europe, the threats are much bigger, and I do see a lot of debate at the political level of what this is happening. Just to clarify, ESA is a technical agency. We are implementing programs. And activities according to the requirements of our member states. So if our member states want us to engage more, we will do so. But this is really a political decision in the hands of our member states.
I would like to return back to your efforts towards the moon. What are the technologies that we expect to see next in that regard?
I mean, the moon is the new rush to the moon, as people call it. So a lot of actions are ongoing. I mentioned Artemis already, I mentioned Moonlight, I mentioned Argonaut. These are the bigger projects, but also something else where we are very active is the so-called Gateway, which is an orbital station around the moon. It's a bit similar to the space station we have now in orbit, but of course around the moon it will be much smaller. But this orbital gateway will be equipped with different modules and different technologies, and about half of the gateway infrastructure will come from Europe. So ESA is providing a major part, they're called IHAB and ASCHBACHER in terms of modules, but will provide a major portion for this lunar station, lunar gateway, which will be used for astronauts for space agencies, for NASA, for example, to bring them astronauts to the moon surface, but also as a base for research and activities. So yes, we are quite active. And in addition, we, of course, will launch smaller rovers and smaller experiments at a smaller scale. And this is an activity that we are calling, where we call for new ideas to industry and to give us new program proposals, project proposals that we could implement. So there's a lot going on. In fact, we have a very important decision point coming up next year, at the end of next year, called the ESA Ministerial Conference. And this is where we put a package on the table for ministers to subscribe and to engage in new projects that are coming to the moon, but also in many other things in the space domain.